In this clip, we're going to go ahead and combine our layers together to make our final image. So here I got all the layers in one PSD, and of course you can find this PSD in the source files. So this is our sort of wider AO map, tighter AO map, normal AO, and we got our transparency number 1, transparency number 2, we got our fog without lights, we got our no fog, no lights, we got lights with no fog, and the original scene. So how do we actually adjust these things? So let's go ahead actually and start with manipulating this fog here. So if you can see, I'm turning it back on and off because we have the same layer, just one with lights and one without. So I'm gonna push this here, and I'm just gonna bring the opacity down until I feel like I'm happy with the result. So right about here, I don't want to have too much of that blue light on the bottom there. So another thing I noticed is that I have this blue light over here that is really not helping me at all. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to duplicate this layer and make it 100%. I'm going to add a mask. I'm going to hold Control I to invert the mask. I'm just going to make sure I select black color here, and I'm just going to rub, white color, and I'm just going to rub out the highlight over here. As easy as that. And you can rub it off anywhere, but really we just need to make sure that we get just the right amount of glow. So I'm just gonna play around with it a little bit just to get the right sort of tone. And another thing, I really don't want to have any of that sort of detail here underneath. So what I want to do is I'm gonna go in and grab some of that blue color here, create a new layer, and with a really nice and big smooth brush, I'm just gonna try and get rid of some of that detail over here. I'm gonna go into my colors here. I'm just gonna make it slightly lighter and just perhaps make it a little bit more. Just gonna bring the opacity just a little bit down, right around here, and perhaps move that glow just a little bit more down. Make another layer, and just gonna do just a little bit more over here. So another thing I have is that there's not much glow going on over there, and it's kind of like not really consistent. So I'm gonna go in and try to add some over there. So what I want to do is I'm just gonna select my layer here, which is the cutout. I'm just gonna hold Control and click on the layer, and I will be able to select it. So I'm gonna create a new layer here, and I'm gonna click on the mask so that I have the mask over here. I'm gonna click Control I to invert the mask, and so now if I paint inside this layer, I'm only painting behind the scene. So that will help me just bring a little bit more of that glow into the back. And that looks pretty good. I'm just gonna go in and actually erase a little bit, again with a soft brush, just around here. Looks pretty good to me. I'm now going to go ahead and merge all of these layers together, and just going to bring the opacity just a little bit down. That looks pretty good to me. So the next thing I want to do is, the scene is really sort of bloomy, so I need to make sure that I have quite a bit of detail showing out in the final image here. So I'm going to go in and select my scene here with no fog, and I'm just gonna bring it down here and just gonna drop the opacity down just around 15-17%. I'm gonna actually add it underneath the glow so it doesn't actually interrupt my glow here, and that looks pretty good. I'm just trying to get the right sort of proportion of the fog, just enough to make it look good. So that looks pretty good. This layer is pretty much useless to us because we're not really gonna use that, so I'm gonna pretty much delete that one. So another thing I want to do is I'm gonna go ahead and actually use our ambient occlusion. So I'm just gonna turn this one on and click multiply. And as you can see, it kind of sort of rendered out this very giant ambient occlusion over everything, and it's a bit too much. So let's go in and drop it down to maybe 8%. Let's see what the difference it makes. It looks actually pretty nice. I really like this. I'm just gonna drop it just a little bit more down. And the idea of this is just to make a little bit sort of more stronger ambient occlusion to make it look a little bit better. So let's go ahead and see if we have any use for the tight one as well. Just gonna click show it, multiply, and bring it all the way down to 1 as well. And it sort of just brings out the detail just a little bit more. And lastly, we have this one. And I don't really think we need it that much around here, but what I do want to do is actually use this part of it. So I'm gonna go in and add mask to it, Control I, and I'm just gonna actually make it visible over here, and perhaps just bring the opacity down. So that looks pretty good to me. So I'm gonna merge all of these layers together, click multiply, and add mask. I'm just gonna go in and actually make sure that I don't have too much ambient occlusion on the bottom here. So that looks pretty good. Next thing I want to do is I'm actually going to go ahead and click Control A, Control Shift C to copy merged, and Control V to paste. So now I have a new layer with just everything merged. I'm going to go in and add Gaussian blur. And that's sort of going to make me give me a little bit of sort of depth of field. I'm actually going to Control Z that just for a second, and going to make the Gaussian blur just a little bit softer. So around here. And I'm going to go in and actually add a mask to it and just sort of paint back the main parts of the level. That looks pretty good. So I noticed this ambient occlusion here is slightly a little bit too much. So I'm just going to go in and actually make sure it doesn't bother me. So I'm going to delete that. So that looks pretty good already. I think the last thing I would like to do is I'm just going to go in here, create a new layer, use the selection here, circular selection, and I'm just going to draw a circle right about here. I'm going to hold Control Shift I to invert the selection. I'm gonna go into my fill-in brush and select black and just fill it with black. Like deselect. I'm gonna go filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And this time I'm just gonna blur it quite a bit right around here. And just bring the opacity a little bit down. I'll just sort of focus a little bit more on my main section and try to avoid the unnecessary places. I'm gonna also create a new layer and just with a black brush just try to get a bit of this out of the way, these areas that we don't really need to focus too much on. And again, just gonna bring it right down, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, around 75 should do just fine, and just bring it a little bit more down. So another thing I can do is I actually can add some God rays to my scene here, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So I'm just gonna select the laser selection tool. I'm just gonna use this to create sort of very definitive sun patterns here. Just gonna finish selection. And I'm gonna select the orange glow here, and just gonna make sure I'm on a new layer. Select, deselect. And just going to make sure it's a little bit more down. So again, it's sort of a very nice way to show to your boss or just have a great idea for the lighting concept of the scene. So I'm going to filter and blur that a little bit. And I'm going to make sure that I have a little bit more of those rays, just so it kind of makes a little bit more sense. And I'm going to make one more. And I'm just going to combine them together. And I'm just going to go in and add a bit of mask on the top here so it doesn't reveal itself too much. And a bit of mask on the edges over here. So that's pretty good. The next thing I could do is actually add a little bit more glow to the scene. So I'm just going to select some of these bits over here, and just add very subtle bits of glow. I can actually decrease the opacity here and just try and get a little bit more glow in here. And same as here, I can just go in, select the color here, and just give it a bit more glow. A little bit of red here as well. We could always done it in Marmoset, but since we're in Photoshop already, it doesn't really take too long. So I'm just gonna bring it right down, and that looks pretty good to me. I'm pretty happy with this image. So this is it for this course, guys. I'm really happy that you watched it, and I really hope that you will stay tuned for the following course that will be coming for the texturing of the scene, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much, and goodbye.